Selomoh Ayllion. Um, his name is pronounced in many ways, as David said. It's also spelled in many ways. I have rarely seen such a simple name spelled and pronounced in so many different ways. Much less has been published about Selomoh Ayllion than about his predecessors like Sol Levi Mortera, Menasse ben Israel, Isaac Aboab, Jacob Sasportas, and he is not as much publicized as those. First, there was a conflict in London that led him to leave his post as Haham there. Then there was a conflict in Amsterdam in which he probably made a few bad choices. In preparing this talk, I read about those conflicts, and I confess that to me it's a confusing blur of personalities fighting each other, where I don't know who is fighting who and what exactly were they fighting about. I will briefly touch about those controversies all the same. Let's say that Selomoh Ayllion has had a bad press in historical writings. A few people have published about him, and the name that crops up most is Matt Goldish, who is apparently a fan of Selomoh Ayllion. At least he finds him very interesting, like I do. My aim today is to provide new details about Selomoh's life that you may have never heard about, based on fresh research in Amsterdam and London archives. I hope this will contribute to a better understanding of the man and his work. Selomoh's life can be divided into four phases. First, Salonica, where he was born and raised. He was a Sabbatean, a follower of Sabbatai Tsvi. The next phase, he is traveling as a Salia, and he visited Safed, Jerusalem, various places in Amsterdam, passed through Amsterdam, and went to London. In London, he became a Haham, a teacher, and in 1700, he passed over to Amsterdam, where he also became a Haham and teacher. He was born in Salonica, and Salonica was home to many synagogues, a lot of them Sephardic. The Great Fire of 1917 destroyed much of the city, of the Jewish neighborhoods, and of the archives of these communities. What remains are parts of his vast cemetery, which is over on the left. Various dates are given for the birth of Selomoh. To stay on the safe side, I would say he was born around 1655, 1660 in Salonica. Sorry. He attended the yeshiva. He was surrounded by Sabbateans and became a Sabbatean himself. Sabbateans were and are, they still exist, followers of Sabbatai Tsvi, the most famous false messiah of all the false messiahs. His emergence in 1665 led to a wave of excitement all over the Jewish world. You see a portrait of him over on the left upper side. Selomoh, meanwhile, got married in Salonica, but the leaders of the Sabbatean movement decided that this was the wrong wife for him, and they gave him another, and he gave his wife to someone else. In 1683, there was a mass conversion of Sabbateans to the Muslim belief, and it is believed that Selomoh was part of that. In other words, he converted to the Islam. After some time as an active participant in the movement of the Shabbatians, he escaped to Safed, where either he confessed to his sins or covered them up. Not long after, he was appointed as a Salia, or an emissary, to Europe to collect funds to help the community in Safed to survive. Apparently, this was a pattern. They adopted a new Salia, and then they sent a new Haham, and they sent him out as a Salia or emissary to collect funds. Sephardic Jews have been living in Eretz Israel since the 1500s, and perhaps the most important knowledge about the Ottoman period can be found in the archives of Sephardic communities like Livorno, Amsterdam, London. What you see in the images are bottom right Safed as it is today, and that is because there are very few or no images of Safed as it was in the 17th century. Because what the Great Fire in 1917 did to Salonica, earthquakes did to Safed, and most of the village has been razed to the ground and built anew. Some claim that some parts of that city are still authentic, but I have my doubts. Um, and the image on the left are the four synagogues in Jerusalem, as it was shortly after 1945. You can see its location on the map on the right, top, top right. In the bottom, there's a synagogue that's indicated with the Star of David. Those are the four synagogues because it's a complex of four synagogues in one building. Its building history is very complicated, but it's been restored since 1945 and you can still visit it today, including a cellar where is a seat reserved for the prophet Elijah, who is still waiting for his return. And the next year, Selomoh Ayllion apparently went to Jerusalem, and we know that because of his of the marriage ban of his daughter Gracia Ayllion with Nathaniel Foer. She is 21 years old, and we can conclude from this that she was born in 1687 in Jerusalem, as indicated here. This is one of the few references of Selomoh Ayllion having been in Jerusalem, and it made me curious. So I checked the listas. The Amsterdam community supported Eretz Israel from its very beginning, as is shown in his archives on the very first pages. In 1616, you find Eretz Israel mentioned. They supported Israel through a yearly gift of around 1,000 patakons, roughly 2.5 guilders. So 2,500 guilders per year. And they did this through the listas. The gift that Amsterdam gave was essentially earmarked. This means they provided a list of people in Jerusalem and later also in Hebron, Safed, Tiberias, who are either pious or poor. That is, Hahams on the one hand, and the families, and the poor on the other. And in the Lista of 1689, which is 2 years after Selomoh was reported in Jerusalem, we see the name of Jacob the Ayllion, Ayllion, Allhion. He is somewhere at the bottom of the list to the right, and he gets 4 patakons, or roughly 10 guilders, for his support. And he is also a rabbi. And this is the parent of, the likely parent of Selomoh. He himself wrote that he was a son of Jacob. And I have no doubt that this Jacob the Ayllion is his father. He's mentioned in a few other years, 1689, etc. And you can see that his name is spelled in many different ways. Ayllion, 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 Agion, Agion. Agion happens to be a place in Spain. So the family thinks it's descended from someone who sometime lived in Agion in Spain. And some of them like to think that they are descendant of the counts of Agion. Selomoh Ayllion, in the meanwhile, um, was appointed in Sabbath as an emissary. Then he went to Jerusalem. From Jerusalem, he went to Italy, and he visited various places there to raise money for the Holy Land, especially for Sabbath. He visited Mantua, Livorno, and other places. But he went on to Amsterdam, according to the stories. And the stories are confirmed by this entry in the Amsterdam archives in the book of cash, cash accounts. And he is gifted with 30 guilders to continue his voyage. And we know that he next went to London. Apparently, in Amsterdam, he did not receive any money for Sabbath or for Eretz Israel. And I think that's because in Amsterdam they already gave a yearly gift to Eretz Israel of about 2,500 guilders. And they saw these emissaries or Savias as a nuisance. If they liked them, they gave them money. If they didn't like them, they gave them no money. Next, he went to London. And this is what the London community looked like in 1657. This is not a contemporary image. It was made in 1957 by an artist who based himself on primary sources. I do think that he did a good job of depicting how it looked like. Jews had just been allowed then in 1656, 1657. As in Amsterdam, it's hard to pinpoint an exact moment that they were admitted. But once they were admitted, they were accepted. They were a fact of life. And they continued to live in London, although the first year were precarious. And the annual accounts of London, which are online these days, which are kept by the London Metropolitan Archives in the archives of Bevis Marks, but recently digitized by the Library of National Library of Israel. They put them online, and these are pictures taken from that. We see here a typical entry from London up above. There's a payment for the Belogrados, those who fled Belgrado in in the 1680s because of a war going on there. They reached Amsterdam, they reached Hamburg, but they also reached London. And 30 pounds, which is about 300 guilders in those times, was given to them. And the entry below that is given for Safed. And it was given by way of Isaac and Daniel Vicini in Liorna. So the money was sent to Liorna and from there to Safed. And it was done at the request of the Savior Selomoh Ayllion. And Ayllion is a faint echo of Agion. And he got 21 pounds for his efforts. And it shows that he was effective as a Salia, although maybe not effective as he would have wished to be. The Londoners took a liking to him and decided to hire him as a Haham, since the last Haham, Isaac Abandana, had Jacob Abandana had died the year before, and they were without a Haham. And he was hired on a contract, which you see on the right. The contract states that he is still in Amsterdam, but he gets his contract anyway, and he is asked to explain the law to everyone, to give a sermon every 15 days, to teach Guimara, that is the Talmud, and lead the Midrash, that is London, like Amsterdam, at a school that teach students how to become Chachams, maybe Chazans, at, at, or teachers. It's also stipulated that his family may come over, and they came all the way from Jerusalem. This is his first payment, and he got 15 pounds for the first quarter that he was a Chacham there, which was still in the year 5449. And this is another picture from the annual accounts. His annual accounts, by the way, have everything. They have the people who paid imposta, promesas, later fintas, to cover the costs of the synagogue, and they have the people to whom salaries were paid, and they have the poor that were provided with assistance from the tzedakah. The National Library of Israel digitized them, and together with Anasau Braga, we are in the process of transcribing them using Transcribus. And you may see our preliminary results on the site Anasau Hebraica. Here's a nice signature from Selomoh Ayllion. and it's put under the statutes of 1694. Here's his signature, and in the lines above, it states that he has read the statutes and that he agrees with them. Below his signature is the signature of David Pardo, who was the Haham of London at that time. And according to reports, he was one of the most learned Hassans ever to lead in a synagogue. Um, and these were the only two to sign in Hebrew. But Selomoh was haunted by his past. Rumors started to circulate early 1690s that he had been a Shabbatian. So after a few years, the Mahamat of Bevis Marks decided to have a report drawn up by the members of the Mahamat and by the elders. And the elders consisted of previous members of the Mahamat. And they all concluded that they were entirely satisfied with the exemplary virtue of Selomoh Ayllion. In other words, he had the support of the leading, let's say, the leading Sephardim of those times. And this was in 1698. But the rumors persisted, and in the year 1700, 5460, the Mahamat and the elders did a last minute effort to keep him for the community, but who went anyway. But it showed that he still had some support in that community, but the rumors were too much for him. So, no doubt, these calumnies that are talked about in the report above persisted and drove him to leave. There are several theories about why he did this. One is that he was attacked in London for his former Shabbatian beliefs. Another is that there was a pull from Amsterdam, where they wanted someone young to replace the recently deceased Jacob Sasportas. And Sasportas may well have recommended Selomoh Ayllion, or they were friends. And this in itself is a surprising thing because Jacob Sasportas was a vehement opponent of Shabbatians, and Selomoh Ayllion was one of them. It may well have been that Sasportas knew about this, but that he thought, well, he has been one, he's okay now, let's accept him as Haham of Amsterdam. These are the last payments made to Selomoh Ayllion to the left in the year 1700. Apparently, there were some debts that had to be settled, and he received them in the year after, in 1701. And below that, we see the last salary given to Ghazan David Pardo, who after this disappeared silently from the London community. And this is a mystery to me because we don't know if he lived of his own will, if he was forced to, if maybe he had something else on his sleeve. Maybe he left in support of Selomoh Ayllion. We simply do not know because the many books of London are silent about this. Mm, There's one thing that bothers me. That's in 1700, maybe in 1699, the building in which services were held by the community and which was rented from a London Christian individual had become too small, and they started building the building that we know today as Bevis Marks. It was finished in 1701, and it's a mystery to me why Selomoh Ayllion did not consider it appropriate to stay for the opening of the building, which after all was started when he was still a Haham. He passed up on a great opportunity here. His successor was David Nieto, and he was to become part of the difficulties later on. Sorry. Mm, Sorry. Then we go to Amsterdam. Amsterdam started much earlier than London. So, first Portuguese merchants started to trickle in 1695. The first synagogue was built in 1608, but the community really got going around 1614 when they first bought a cemetery, which you see up or right above, um, Ets Haim and Oude Kerk in Amstel. In 1615, when they started the school, which you see up below left. Well, this is the situation today, and the building is from 1675, but the buildings before that are known but not by image. The first synagogue upper left was Bet Jacob, which was enlarged in 1639 to accommodate three merging communities, and which served as a synagogue until 1675 when the one bottom below was built. And this is the synagogue where uh, Selomoh Ayllion started as a Chacham in 1700. The first archives in Amsterdam started in 1614, and you see a page of the first register kept, which is the burial register of Bet Jacob. It started 1614, and they, of course, they had already uh, Chachams, which first were imported, but later were homegrown, like Manasseh ben Israel. Here we see that Selomoh Ayllion and Selomoh d'Oliveira were appointed jointly as Chachamim of Amsterdam. It's a bit strange because Selomoh d'Oliveira already was a Chacham since the death of Jacob's Aspostas in 1698. But they were in this contract appointed together. Um, um, his salary is fixed at 1,200 guilders a year, which is about 100 pounds, which was 120 pounds, while in London he had earned 100 pounds a year. The perks were the same. That is to say, he received peat to keep warm in winter. He received matzos at festive days, and um, he had free housing, like in London. He was appointed as Haham, and he replaced Selomoh Ayllion as head of Ets Haim, which was the most important Sephardic institution in that time that educated students who became Chachams, Chazans, etc. later on. So this was an important job for Selomoh Ayllion. He and Selomoh Ayllion both had to preach once every 15 days. And below, at the bottom, you see a sort of scheme where it is said who preaches on what date. Uh, so they divided the task of holding sermons. Here we see the Hahams of Amsterdam from the beginning. The Pardo family, the Mortera, Manasseh ben Israel, and they are a curious mix. 7 of them came from the Middle East. Amsterdam, yeah, consisted of conversos who had not yet established Ets Haim. They did so, but first they had to import their Chachams. And they did so at the beginning, but also later on, like with Selomoh Ayllion. 2 came from North Africa, 2 came from Portugal, but educated in Amsterdam. This is Manasseh ben Israel and Ishak Aboab. 5 were born in Amsterdam and educated in Amsterdam until about 1800. And 1 came from Italy. This was Saul Levi Mortera, who is the only one of Ashkenazic descent in this lineup. So Selomoh Ayllion became a the head of Ets Haim, and the head of Ets Haim is called the Ros. His title was Chacham, Harav, Ros, or Robi, or Rabbi, or Rabbi, or Ribi, or Robi. It's spelled all different ways, but you have to be careful with these titles because whenever you see in Amsterdam an R before a name, it means Rabbi, Rebi, Robi, Robi, Rebi even, and it always means teacher. If you were a Chacham, a religious leader of the community, you were a Harav, an age. Many mistakes have been made with that title of Rabbi, Robi, Robi. On the left, you see the first list of students who studied under Selomoh Ayllion, and on the right, the last. The first is from, oh, it's the other way around, sorry. On the right is the first, and This one was from 1700. You see that one of his pupils was Aaron Saporta, who was not the son of Jacob, but a son-in-law. It's over here. And on the left is the last, and we are fortunate to have all the lists of the period that Selomoh Ayllion was Rosh of Ets Haim. So we can reconstruct his midrash of the years 1700 to 1728. So what happened to those students? I picked one year, 1718. And, on the right is the list of students, about 30, about 15 of them I could trace what became of them. And he ended up as Hahams, Chazans, Rabbis, composers, printers, booksellers, authors. And he ended up in Amsterdam, The Hague, Maasen, Hamburg, London, Suriname, Barbados, Curaçao. And perhaps this is the more or the most important legacy of Selomoh Ayllion, that he put his pupils all over the world, in Europe, but also in the Americas. I'll mention a few examples. Isaac Abandana, the Brito, became Chacham in Amsterdam. Moses Gomez de Mesquita became a Chacham in London. Aaron Ledesma became a Chacham in Suriname. Selomoh Saruko became a Chacham in The Hague. Joseph Cohen Belafanta, that's one of those Belocrados that I mentioned before, became a librarian of Ets Haim. Isaac Templo became a printer and bookseller in Amsterdam. And Samuel Mendes Solas became a Chacham in Curaçao. So it's I consider this quite a success for Selomoh Ayllion, and my dream is to one day have all the names of all of his students and all of their destinies. This is a testimony to Selomoh Ayllion, because besides being Chacham and Rosh of Ets Haim, he also very much was a member of his community. That is to say, he became a member of various charities. He paid his ventas, he paid promesas, he left money upon his desk to the community, and not every rabbi did this. Not every chacham. To the left is a board that you may find when you visit the Wintersnoge in Amsterdam. And the Wintersnoge used to be the Midrash, the rabbinical school. And up on the walls are these boards. I like them very much in their simplicity and elegancy. And the column on the right, below the black line, you see Moreno Ayllion. Moreno Ayllion, I enlarged it a bit here. And this is Teacher Ayllion. I hesitated because someone thought that this referred to a family Moreno Ayllion. But I discovered that such a family never existed. And the minute book of the board of Ets Haim has his This list of 1701, in which is mentioned HR, HHR, Haham, Haraf, Ros, Orobi, Selomoh Ayllion. So this must have been the same as the one on the board. It is fitting then that the Amsterdam archives, especially the Ets Haim library, holds a collection of responsa and some novellae, some news by pupils of Selomoh Ayllion. Those are the pupils that are mentioned before in this list of 1718 and other years. And it's also fitting that Ets Haim has a manuscript holding a responsa and a halachic novella by Selomoh Ayllion himself. You see his signature at the bottom right. Part of the job of Selomoh was writing Ketubot. He got a fixed amount of money for that. I don't know exactly how much. I thought it was 15 guilders. This is an example of Ishak, son of Moses Gomez. He married Sarah of Abraham 4. And you see here the signature of Ayllion, Samuel Ayllion. There's another example. Abraham, son of Jacob Teixeira de Matos, married Ribka, daughter of Ishak Teixeira de Matos, also with the signature of Selomoh Ayllion. And to the right below, there's a peculiarity. It says H.Y. Aboab. Now, what's that? These were pre-printed Ketubot. And Haham Isaac Aboab was a Haham in Amsterdam from very early on. He was a Haham in Brazil, but returned to Amsterdam in 1654 and served his community until his death, 1693. So he wrote a lot of Ketubot. And they pre-printed these Ketubot. And what you see on bottom right is that they pre-printed his name. So when he died, they was left with a stack of Ketubot that were pre-printed but not filled in. And they decided to not throw them away, but to reuse them. So his name was and memory was carried on these pre-printed Ketubot until they were out of stock. And this is a special one. This is the Ketubah of Selomoh Ayllion Alea de Medino, the second wife of Selomoh. And you see here his signature not on the right. There is the signature of someone else who presided over the marriage. But in the middle, where the signature of the groom should be and is. And to the left is the signature of a witness who represented the community. This ketubah contained the name of a notary. And Jacob Marash found out for me who the name of this notary. And this led me to the discovery of a prenuptial agreement between Selomoh Ayllion and Leah de Medina. And here we have the signature of Selomoh Ayllion in Latin letters. His wife could only sign her mark, which is here. And below that is the name of her mother, Deborah de Medina. The dowry consisted of 2,000 guilders, and it was paid for, which was very unusual, but not by the mother, Deborah de Medina, but by Selomoh Ayllion himself. Apparently, he had money, and she did not. Selomoh's wife had been Ora or Oro de Aaron Baruch. Um, and her name we find on his marriage band, Oro Baruch. She had died, and Salomon Ayllion had minor children. The youngest was 12, I believe, and he needed someone to look after them. So he found himself a suitable wife. She agreed, and they married. In the margin of this marriage band, you find the word weeskamer. Selomoh Ayllion was asked by the weeskamer if he could, or orphan chamber, if he could provide details about the money left by his first wife to the children. And the orphan chamber in Amsterdam had the duty to look after orphans in the city, whether they were Catholic or Protestant or Jewish. So whenever they found out that someone had died and there was a widow or widower, they asked him if there was money in the bank left by the deceased, and they were asked to give an account of them. And Selomoh did as well. Here is a record in the archives of the orphan chamber. En het mentions Salomon Ayllion, rabbijn van de Joodse natie al hier, rabbi of the Jewish nation in the city. And he proves to his 5 children that they have been given 600 guilders from the inheritance of their mother. And probably this was the money that was given to or assigned to Oro Baruch in her ketubah, which may have been signed already in Jerusalem. We don't have a copy of that, but in the ketubah it is established what the widow received when her husband died. And if she died, that money was meant for her children. And we see here the children, the oldest is 22, the youngest is 12. And there's Nathaniel Foa, the zwager or brother-in-law of the children. And he was married to Gracia, daughter of Salomon Ayllion, the one who was born in Jerusalem. She had already married and had children of her own in that time. So in 1713, Selomoh was embroiled in a scandal in his time concerning a certain Nehemiah Gayom. And Nehemiah Gayom was born in the Middle East. He was a Shabbatian. He was a bit of a traveler. He started out in Eretz Israel, but later went to Italy and to Hamburg, and slowly he made his way to Amsterdam. And Selomoh Gayom, no, Nehemiah Hayom, because of his Shabbatian sympathies, was suspect. So Selomoh Ayllion, we recognize on the right, was asked to examine his writings. And Selomoh Ayllion was a bit of a Shabbatian himself, and it's clear that he still was somewhat of a Shabbatian still in 1713. But he defended Nehemiah Ayllion, claiming that Nehemiah Ayllion was a perfect fellow with no Shabbatian sympathies, and that he was uh, um, um, uh, well, he was all right. And Nehemiah Ayllion himself claimed the same. This is where Tzvi Ashkenazi stepped in, and we see him here in the middle. And he was an enemy of Shabbatians, and he declared Nehemiah Ayllion persona non grata and banned him from the city. This led to a reaction of Selomoh Ayllion, who banned Tzvi Ashkenazi from the city. This was not accepted at first, but Selomoh Ayllion, despite being himself a Shabbatian, and his vision on Nehemiah Ayllion was backed up by the Mahamat of Amsterdam. So in the end, a power struggle emerged, and the end result was that Nehemiah Ayllion and Tzvi Ashkenazi had to leave the city. And in my view, this is a conflict that hurt all of them. Ayllion was banned from the city, Tzvi Ashkenazi was banned from the city, Selomoh Ayllion was allowed to stay, but with his status very much diminished. On the left, sorry. So on the left, you see the first page of a pamphlet in which Selomoh Ayllion approved of the writings of Nehemiah Ayllion. There were other persons involved in the war, but time is running out, and it would prove well. It will be it would suffice for a presentation in itself, but I will leave that to someone else. We saw Selomoh Ayllion already. We see his curly hair, his beautiful beard, well kept, nearly horizontal at the bottom. And it seems that this was also a Shabbatian thing to do. And at one point, the Portuguese Jewish community paid for the maintenance of his beard. And this is shown somewhat small in the image on the left. Pago conta de concertar a barba do Haham Ayllion, spelled here as Elion. 1 guilder and 4 stuivers. And now that is a large amount of money that represents well, the salary of a skilled person in Amsterdam for 1 day. So someone got paid a day's work to trim the beard of Selomoh Ayllion. And this shows you how much attention he paid to a well-kept facial hair. Here was his gravestone on the right. And as I told you before, he left an amount of money to the Portuguese Jewish community on his death by way of last will. I still have to find that last will, but he gave 200 guilders for the community. And again, this is something that rabbis mostly did not do. The last slide. Irony of ironies. This is praise from London. That's the community that drove him away in 1700. It comes from a few from an elegy by no one else than Isaac Nieto, son of the David Nieto, who was the successor of Selomoh Ayllion, and it calls him a distinguished maestro, a venerable preceptor, a famous theologian, an eminent predicator, preacher, a devotee, a saint, and he is dead. Thank you. Well, this is the very, very last slide. I told you about Ketubot, that Selomoh was obliged to sign in Amsterdam. He also did so during his time in London. And here we see two examples of that. We see in this case his signature to the left, no, to the right. One for Abraham Mementon and on the right for Isaac Pereira. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. I enjoyed that a lot. In the chat, Ali was asking some of the questions that we'd want to ask. Ali, do you want to put them yourself, or
Okay, sorry, I was just unmuted. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I just need to remind myself what I asked now. So first of all, so when you first went to Amsterdam on Salia, and then didn't get any money and left, I was wondering if that was because the Amsterdam Mahamad at the time knew that he'd been a Sabbatean.
At that point, I don't think so. But now you ask, I'm not sure. It could be, but in Amsterdam, we see a pattern of, on the one hand, Amsterdam giving money to Eretz Israel, and on the other hand, of Saliaks or emissaries from Israel arriving in Amsterdam. And there are several entries in the minute books of the Amsterdam community that show that they were, let's say, irritated by such people because they gave every year.
Yeah.
And it depended on how much they liked those emissaries or how well they represented themselves. Sometimes they were given money, and sometimes they were not given money. And sometimes they were given money with the stipulation that they had to that future Saliaks were to be refused for a period of 5 to 10 years.
I've seen those.
So there's a pattern there.
Yeah.
Of the Amsterdam people being annoyed by all those Saliak. Another point, Amsterdam gave money itself, but also these Saliachs costed a lot of money of themselves. If a Saliach went around and collected money, about 25% of his earnings, of the money he collected, went to himself for his travels, sometimes with his son, often with someone who took care of him, sometimes with the family. They cost money. And sometimes it exceeded this 25%, it became 50%. And in Amsterdam, they did not like that.
My second question was whether Oro Baruch, the first wife, was the one that the Sabbatians
That I don't
replaced.
know. I wish I would know.
Replaced. Yeah.
Maybe some archive will give some answers to that. Not a lot has been written about Selomoh Ayllion, but there's a manuscript left by Selomoh Ayllion in the Ets Haim library, in which he tells a lot about himself. And one of the
Does he
things
ever
that comes
admit
from
to
that
having been
one.
a Sabbatian?
Yeah.
Does he ever admit to having been a Sabbatian or even having converted
Well,
to Islam, which is a pretty of a clincher.
Yeah, from his writings, it becomes clear that he was one, that he had sympathies. But I think he kept that to himself mostly.
So he never makes a sort of self-criticism, as it were. He never comes clean.
No,
Interesting.
that would have been the end of his job, I think, or would have presented trouble.
Sorry, David, I have one more observation to make, and I don't know whether there's somebody in the group that might be able to answer this as well as Tom. So I mean, it seems, as I said, a bit of a clincher that he actually converted to Islam when he was in either in Salonica or Jerusalem or wherever. That's kind of, it's obviously reversible. It sounds like he had kind of buyer's remorse a little bit, and then went back to Judaism. But is that acceptable? What's the sort of convention,
But
the Talmudic convention on that?
That's one of the vagaries of this story.
Mm.
First of all, the evidence seems to me to be circumstantial. He was part of the group of Shabbatians in Salonica, and it's reported that they converted en masse. So probably he was one of them. And also this bit about his first wife being rejected as a suitable wife and being given a second wife points to his staying within that group of converted Shabbatians. But we don't have something from a Sharia court or something like that.
Setting aside that almost every Haham in London is defenestrated, why specifically do you think he was kicked out? Do you want to nail your colours to the mast?
Yeah, it's a question of tensions below the surface. I think he was still harassed by someone called Jacob Vidank, who continued to spread rumors about him. And Matt Goldish, who knows much more about this than me, wrote about that. But it was not very much into the open. At a certain point in 1690, an anonymous letter was sent to the Mahamat of London.
Yeah.
And the Mahamat took the accusations of Sabbatai and belief seriously, but recognized the handwriting of the one who wrote it and made Jacob Vidank confess that he had written the letter. And he was forbidden ever to spread rumors anymore about Selomoh Ayllion, but continued to do so. And it seems to me that either Selomoh Ayllion was fed up with it, or that he found a better job in Amsterdam, better paid, that is. 1,200 guilders instead of 1,000 guilders.
Being compelled to sign a letter, of course, doesn't necessarily make the accusation untrue.
Well, I think the accusation might have been true,
Yeah,
but it was something of the past, and it looks like the people surrounding Selomoh Ayllion thought, well, that was in the past, and it's something that he left behind him.
yeah.
They liked him, and they thought he is okay now. Something like
Ali,
that.
so sorry, because Ali was asking, of course, about conversion to Islam, which got me thinking, how did the Eastern, well, maybe it's not a question, maybe it's just something to put out in the ether. I wonder how the sort of Eastern Sephardim viewed these sort of ex-Catholics kind of knocking around in London and Amsterdam and so forth. And whether just because they happened to be rich, they were able to kind of live with it, or whether there was some kind of attention is not the word, not disparagement, but some kind of just as like there's a suspicion over people who were Shabbatians, maybe there was a suspicion over people who used to be Catholic.
In the Levant or the Middle East or
Yeah.
surroundings, the divisions were as large as in Amsterdam, Hamburg. Shabbatian enthusiasm circled the whole Jewish world and affected everyone. So in Eretz Israel, in Izmir and Salonica, you also found Shabbatians.
No, that's not what
Was
I
opposed.
meant. I meant we have a community that used to be Catholic,
Ah,
and whether there was some suspicion the other way. We always tend to see some
I
Western.
don't think so, because by that time these communities were nearly 2 centuries old.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of intermingling to the point that you can't say who was Sephardic unless by name,
Yeah.
who was Middle Eastern, Mizrahi, etc. But you have a point in that those people in the Middle East thought these Westerners were rich, and they were living beyond what was acceptable for a Jew, and they certainly thought that they should give much, much more to their poor brethren in Jerusalem, Safed, Tiberias, and Hebron. And there was
still
a
true,
real,
though. I think.
yeah. So Spartus is an example of that. He did that. He said to the Amsterdam Jews, "You're rich, you're supposed to give more for Israel," until he himself became more rich and did leave nothing to the community or Eretz Israel in his last will. And there was someone else, Hiskiau da Silva, who came as a Salia, our emissary to Amsterdam in 1692. He was successful. because he convinced one of those rich Amsterdam merchants to give 20,000 guilders for the establishment of 2 yeshivas, one in Jerusalem, one in Hebrew. But he also came with a message: you are rich, you're supposed to give more. And well, you see a pattern there. People from the East coming in and accusing the Amsterdam people of being rich and not caring enough about Eretz Israel, and on the other hand, the merchants of Amsterdam who said, "What the heck? We send money every year."
Yes.
That was part of the problem, because they gave money that was allocated to individuals. And these so-called listas, I showed you some examples of them, or one example. And on these lists, I mentioned the people who were supposed to receive 10 patrons, 5 patrons, 1 patron, a quarter of a patron per year from Amsterdam. And in Jerusalem, they resented that, because they would much more liked to have a lump sum and then do whatever they like to do with it.
Yes. So I have one last question. I'm sorry, because I can see Bernard is waiting patiently. In Hebrew, do you know how his name was spelled? Did it start with an ayin? Because on the signature, it has sort of slow-mo and then some sort of squiggle around it. My question, it would actually be on the top of the ketubot, because maybe that would explain, because in the old sort of Portuguese Hebrew, ayin would be like nug, so perhaps that's how agion spelling came. It may be that different people did it different ways. That's speculation. Maybe Jacob can confirm, or somebody else. But
well, I gave this talk before to a reunion of descendants of Ayllion, or supposed descendants, a few weeks ago. And I showed them this slide with the name of the father of Selomoh Ayllion, who was, what's his name, Jacob Ayllion. And this name is spelled in different ways, among them Agion. And among the descendants were Jews from Egypt who spelled their name Agion, Agion. And they felt vindicated.
Okay.
Because their spelling was already there in the 17th century. But I don't know the answer to your question, because I don't read Hebrew.
It's a trivial question. Bernard, sorry to keep you waiting.
Yeah, not a problem. No, it's fascinating, and thank you. I have 3 questions, although I have to say that I love the idea of the community paying for his beard to be trimmed. I think that's something that I would definitely go for. The first question links straight in. It's about money. He seems to have been able to give away large amounts of money. And from the amounts that you show him as having received as pay and other things, it doesn't look as if he would have had that kind of money at his disposal, even writing ketubot. Was he independent, or was the family independently wealthy? So that's my first question.
That's a bit of a mystery to me too, but he did earn money in London. It must have been more than he ever received before. And maybe he was able to save some of that. And gradually he made more money because he left his sons and daughters well off with substantial amounts of money. He even invested in the, let's say, the National Lottery of Holland of the time, the Nationale Loterij, which was a lottery, but it was also a business. It was set up by the United Provinces of the Netherlands to have a form of income to use for its expensive army, etc. So it was a business, and apart from buying lottery tickets, you could also invest into their business, and he did, and he received interest on his investments through the earnings of that national lottery. So that contributed to his wealth. And if, yeah, he wrote Ketubot, and he wrote many of them. So that was a source of income.
Okay,
And
thanks.
if he didn't spend much money to other things, he had free lodging, he had free peat in Amsterdam and coal in London to keep him and his family warm.
Mhm.
So
The second question is, you talked about him placing his students all around the world, and it kind of ties in with Ali's question. Would people in the communities that received his students, in whatever leadership roles they took, have been aware, and would the students have necessarily been Sabbateans, or was that not something that was ever discussed and ever known about?
that's a very good question. I attended a symposium in which every member of the symposium or everyone who gave a talk at the symposium answered the questions. That's a very good question, which means they took the time
Thank you.
to think and think of an answer. I think some of them must have been, yes,
Mhm.
but I wouldn't be able to say which ones. Part of that Shabbatianism was Kabbalism, and Kabbalism was part of Shabbatianism, but it was also a force on its own.
Mhm.
And this was very much accepted within the Jewish world. So there were a lot of rabbis who were also Kabbalists, like Jacob Sasportas and others.
Okay.
And no doubt they passed on this Kabbalism to the students. But this Shabbatianism, I don't know, and to what extent.
Okay.
The history of Ets Haim has not been written yet, and this is one of the things that should be investigated.
Right. The third question, which is, you talked about, well, I don't know whether it's answered. You talked about his successor, David Nieto, in London, and his son having written this glowing eulogy on his death. And it poses a question that I was wondering about from reading up on David Nieto. He was very much an ecumenical figure. He worked with people from other religions in London. And I wondered whether or not Selomoh had also had that impact, or that mixing with the non-Jewish communities in London, and whether or not he was respected as an ecumenical figure.
That I don't know. I don't read about his reaching out to non-Jews like Manasseh ben Israel did and others did. I haven't read about discussions between him and Londoners interested in Judaism. I don't think there was a lot of that.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. We've overstretched a bit, but I think we have to ask one last question on personal grooming. You were saying that it was a sort of typical Sabbatean beard. Is that the same concept as sort of Muslims who have this sort of round chin beard in imitation of what Muhammad had? Or I mean, where do you know where this information comes from?
I don't know. My knowledge of beards is practically non-existent. I've been told by Matt Goldish that this was apparently a thing with Shabbatians. So I go for his judgment.
Who was it who found the reference to the payment for his beard trim? Sorry?
I did.
Oh, congratulations! That's
Much of what I told here is new.
sorry, Ali, you've got.
Sorry, just on the beard issue, it's a lovely beard.
Oh God!
But no. As far as I know, in the Muslim tradition, a sort of a Muslim beard is not shaggy. It shouldn't be anyway, and it should kind of not cover the lips, not touch the lips. The hair should not touch the lips. And I noticed that in his beard, it's very much like that. You can see his entire mouth, and his lips. So I wonder if that might be a thing. It's just
yeah, it could be. I'll ask.
Well, we shall inscribe this this beard information on your gravestone, because I think
A lot
it
of
is.
bad jokes.
I think it's the most fabulous piece of trivia that anyone has found today.
There's a question from Ray Montanges in the chat that
I missed that.
you might like to look at very quickly.
My great aunt Rebecca Levy Montanges married Abraham David Ayllion, in London in 1878, but both were born and died in Amsterdam. They had 3 children, Judith, David, and Jane. Did any of these come up in your talk, Ton?
No, they did not. But another member of the Ayllion family that I met a few weeks ago was a Mette Schmidt. And she has done research into the children of Selomoh Ayllion, and they all became a very wealthy businessmen. So they were sent off by the father with some money, and some of them made a profit of that. There was one black sheep in the family who did not do so well and was banned to Hamburg and was asked not to come ever again to Amsterdam by his family, and he didn't. And, all the children of Selomoh Ayllion died one by one, but this black sheep was the one who lived longest.
So that's
But,
Raymond's ancestor.
there's a lot of
That's your lot, Ray.
Yeah, thanks.
there are
Thanks
a
for
lot
putting
of
that forward,
descendants
Bernard.
of him, and I'm sure that David Ayllion must be a descendant of Selomoh. If you send me some details, I will find out.
That's all I have, Ton. Very limited.
Okay, that's enough. But send it again to me personally. But
Okay, thank
the
you.
chat will be gone later
Well
on.
done.
So you have famous ancestors. Raymond.
Famous, yeah, on both sides,
Bearded also.
especially the men.
So if does anybody else have anything to add, or we can close the meeting?
I want to check if your mustache is Muslim or Jewish.
I want money. I want money from this society for personal grooming, I tell you. But, But no, I mean I'm sure there's a PhD in sort of Sabbatai beards for somebody. Ali, maybe this is what you should be studying. Right. Well, thank you very much, Tom, because in all seriousness, he is one of the Hahamim that sort of rather skimmed over, and I always assumed there was some terrible dark secret there. Maybe there is, but we shall see.
Well, I think he was a good Haham, but he made some bad choices along the way, which damaged his reputation. I think he served well, and they didn't send him away in Amsterdam, and they were loath to let him go in London. In the end, I think he did okay. There's just this shadow over his life.
Okay, thank you, and I'm glad to know about his beard. I always thought it looked like a dog, like a terrier, but now we know.
Now we know.
So,
thank you, Ali.
Well, thank you very much for that, and thank you everyone for attending. We shall return in 2 weeks. I don't think we have confirmed the speaker, but there is a speaker, and we look forward to seeing everybody then. So many thanks everyone who joined us, and many thanks, Ton, especially.
Thank you, Ton.
See you.
Thank
Bye.
you, one and all.